Uncover Poirot's Secrets, where Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot reveals thrilling mysteries.
In the shadowed halls of Blackthorn Hall, a grand estate steeped in secrets, a brutal murder shatters the veneer of civility. Sir Reginald Thornhill, a collector of ancient treasures, lies dead, struck down by a bronze statuette in his locked study. Who among the elegant guests, his grieving widow, his restless daughter, a charming barrister, a curious scholar, a cunning journalist, or a mysterious widow and her timid companion, holds the key to his death? A cryptic note signed L, a hidden amulet, a scuff mark in the dark. What do they conceal? Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant detective whose little grey cells unravel a web of lies, betrayal, and forbidden secrets. Can he expose the killer before another shadow falls? Dive into a classic mystery where every clue counts, every motive hides a twist, and the truth is as shocking as it is inevitable. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Blackthorn Hall. The late summer sun hung low over the rolling hills of Devon, casting a golden glow across the manicured lawns of Blackthorn Hall. The estate, a sprawling Georgian mansion, stood as a monument to old wealth, its ivy-clad walls and tall chimneys exuding an air of timeless dignity. Yet beneath its serene exterior, an undercurrent of unease pulsed through the gathering that had assembled within its oak-panelled halls. It was the kind of unease that Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for human nature, would have detected at once. A faint discord in the polite smiles, a shadow behind the courteous words. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's loyal friend and occasional chronicler, stood at the edge of the drawing-room, a glass of sherry in hand, observing the assembled company. The invitation to Blackthorn Hall had come unexpectedly, extended by Sir Reginald Thornhill, a retired diplomat whose reputation for hospitality was matched only by his penchant for collecting rare antiquities. Hastings had accepted out of curiosity, for Sir Reginald's gatherings were famed for their eclectic mix of guests, each, in their way, a figure of intrigue. The drawing-room was a study in elegance. Crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead, their light reflecting off polished mahogany, furniture, and the delicate porcelain figurines that adorned the mantelpiece. A grand piano stood in one corner, its lid propped open as if awaiting a performance, while tall windows offered a view of the rose gardens beyond. The air carried the faint scent of lavender, mingling with the sharper notes of cigar smoke and perfume. Sir Reginald himself presided over the gathering with the air of a benevolent monarch. A tall man in his late 60s, with silver hair and a neatly trimmed moustache, he moved among his guests with practised ease, his voice resonant, with the cadence of a man accustomed to command. "My dear friends," he said, raising a glass, "to new acquaintances and old secrets, may they both enrich our weekend." The toast was met with polite laughter, though Hastings noted that not all the smiles reached the eyes. To Sir Reginald's left stood his wife, Lady Eleanor Thornhill, a striking woman of perhaps 40, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her emerald gown shimmered in the candlelight, but her expression was guarded, her gaze flitting nervously toward the door. Beside her was their daughter, Miss Clara Thornhill, a young woman of 22 whose delicate beauty was marred by a certain restlessness. She toyed with a pearl necklace, her fingers betraying attention that her serene smile could not mask. Across the room, Dr. Maurice Langston, a retired physician with a penchant for archaeology, was deep in conversation with Mr. Victor Crane, a sharp-eyed journalist whose articles on high society had earned him both fame and enemies. Crane's thin lips curled into a sardonic smile as he spoke, his words too low for Hastings to catch. Nearby, Mrs. Beatrice Langley, a widow of considerable wealth, sipped her sherry with an air of detached amusement, her keen eyes missing nothing. Her companion, Miss Evelyn Carter, a governess-turned-secretary, hovered at her side, her plain grey dress a stark contrast to the opulence around her. The final guest, Mr. Julian Warrender, lounged by the fireplace, his handsome features lit by the flickering flames. A barrister by trade, his reputation for charm was matched only by his rumoured fondness for gambling. He caught Hastings' eye and raised his glass in a mock salute, his smile carrying a hint of mischief. As the clock on the mantel struck 7, a butler appeared to announce dinner. The guests filed into the dining room, where a long table gleamed with silver and crystal. The meal was exquisite: roast pheasant, glazed vegetables, and a velvety claret. But Hastings found his attention drawn less to the food than to the dynamics at play. Sir Reginald dominated the conversation, regaling the group with tales of his diplomatic postings in Cairo and Istanbul, while Lady Eleanor offered only occasional strained remarks. Clara, seated beside Warrender, seemed to hang on his every word, though her eyes darted toward her mother with a flicker of unease. Dr. Langston, ever the enthusiast, spoke at length about a recent excavation in Egypt, his hands animated as he described a newly discovered tomb. "The artifacts, my dear Hastings," he said, turning to him, "are unlike anything I've seen. Golden amulets, alabaster vases, and a curious statuette of Anubis. Sir Reginald has promised to show us his own collection tomorrow." "Indeed," Sir Reginald said, his tone jovial, but his eyes sharp. "My study holds treasures that would make even the British Museum envious." Crane, ever the provocateur, leaned forward. "And do these treasures come with stories, Sir Reginald? Or perhaps secrets?" The table fell silent for a moment, the journalist's words hanging in the air like a challenge. Sir Reginald's smile tightened, but he replied smoothly, "Every artifact has a tale, Mr. Crane. The trick is knowing which ones are worth telling." Hastings, attuned to such nuances, noted the fleeting glances exchanged among the guests. Mrs. Langley's lips twitched as if suppressing a smile, while Miss Carter's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her glass. Warrender, meanwhile, seemed to find the exchange amusing, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. As the meal drew to a close, Sir Reginald rose, proposing a final toast. "To Blackthorn Hall," he said, "and to the mysteries we uncover together." The words were innocuous, yet Hastings felt a chill, as if the very walls of the mansion were listening. The evening continued with coffee in the drawing-room, where Clara played a haunting piece on the piano, her fingers coaxing melancholy notes from the keys. Hastings, standing by the window, caught sight of a figure moving in the garden. A groundskeeper, perhaps, though the hour was late. As the guests began to retire, Sir Reginald invited Hastings to join him in his study for a nightcap. The room was a treasure trove of antiquities, shelves lined with ancient texts, a glass case displaying a golden scarab, and a locked cabinet that drew Hastings's eye. "A precaution," Sir Reginald said, noting his interest. "Some things are too valuable to leave unguarded." They spoke briefly of Poirot, whom Sir Reginald had met years ago in Brussels. "A remarkable man," he said. "I trust he's well." "Very well," Hastings replied, though he wondered why Sir Reginald had not invited Poirot himself. The omission felt deliberate, though he could not say why. As Hastings made his way to his room, the house seemed to settle into an uneasy silence. He paused at the top of the staircase, glancing down the dimly lit corridor. A door creaked open, and Miss Carter emerged, her face pale in the lamplight. She started at the sight of him, then hurried away without a word. Sleep did not come easily that night. Hastings lay awake, replaying the evening's conversations, the subtle tensions, the unspoken rivalries. Blackthorn Hall, for all its grandeur, felt like a stage set for a drama yet to unfold. He thought of Poirot, wishing his friend were here to unravel the threads of unease that seemed to weave through the house. Unbeknownst to Hastings, far away in London, Hercule Poirot was preparing to board a train to Devon. A cryptic telegram from Sir Reginald, sent that very afternoon, had piqued his curiosity. "Urgent, Blackthorn Hall. Discretion required." Poirot, ever attuned to the call of mystery, had packed his valise and adjusted his moustache with a gleam in his eye. The little grey cells, he knew, would soon be put to work. As the clock struck midnight, Blackthorn Hall stood silent, its secrets locked within its walls. But secrets, as Poirot often said, have a way of revealing themselves to those who know how to listen. And so the stage was set for a tragedy that would test even the great detective's formidable intellect. Chapter 2. The Shadow Falls. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Blackthorn Hall, casting long, slanting rays across the polished floors. The house, which had seemed so grand and inviting the previous evening, now carried an air of stillness, as if holding its breath. Captain Arthur Hastings rose early, his military habits unbroken despite the luxurious surroundings. He dressed with care, noting the faint chill in the air, and descended to the breakfast room, where a buffet of kedgeree, toast, and marmalade awaited. The guests gathered slowly, their faces betraying the uneven sleep of a night spent in unfamiliar beds. Sir Reginald Thornhill was absent, a fact remarked upon by Mrs. Beatrice Langley as she buttered her toast. "Our host is usually so punctual," she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "I do hope he hasn't been detained by some urgent matter." Lady Eleanor, seated at the head of the table, offered a strained smile. "Reginald often rises early to work in his study," she said, though her fingers tightened around her teacup. "He'll join us soon, I'm sure." Clara Thornhill, pale and subdued, picked at her plate, her gaze fixed on the window. Julian Warrender, by contrast, was in high spirits, regaling Dr. Maurice Langston with a tale of a recent courtroom triumph. Victor Crane, the journalist, sat apart, scribbling in a small notebook, his expression unreadable. Miss Evelyn Carter, ever the shadow to Mrs. Langley, ate in silence, her eyes darting toward the door with every creak of the floorboards. As the meal progressed, a sense of unease began to settle over the group. The butler, a stoic man named Hargreaves, entered to clear the plates, his face betraying nothing. Yet Hastings, ever observant, noted the man's hands tremble slightly as he lifted a tray. "Is Sir Reginald not joining us?" Hastings asked, keeping his tone casual. Hargreaves hesitated, a flicker of discomfort crossing his features. "Sir Reginald instructed that he was not to be disturbed this morning, sir," he replied. "He is in his study, attending to important matters." The answer satisfied no one, least of all Hastings, whose instincts, honed by years at Poirot's side, prickled with suspicion. He excused himself and stepped into the hall, intending to take a turn in the garden to clear his mind. As he passed the foot of the grand staircase, he heard a muffled cry, a sharp, stifled sound that seemed to come from the direction of Sir Reginald's study. Hastings froze, his heart quickening. The house was large, its corridors labyrinthine, but he retraced his steps, guided by memory. The study door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkened hallway. He approached cautiously, knocking lightly. "Sir Reginald, are you there?" No answer came. Pushing the door open, Hastings stepped inside and stopped dead. Sir Reginald Thornhill lay slumped over his desk, his silver hair matted with blood. A heavy bronze statuette, shaped like an Egyptian falcon, lay beside him, its base stained crimson. The room was in disarray. Papers scattered, a chair overturned, and the locked cabinet Hastings had noticed the previous night now stood open, its contents seemingly untouched. Hastings' military training took over. He checked for a pulse, finding none, and noted the coldness of the body. Sir Reginald had been dead for some hours, likely since the early morning. The window was latched, the room sealed save for the door through which Hastings had entered. He stepped back, careful not to disturb the scene, and called for Hargreaves. The butler's composure shattered at the sight of his master. "Good God," he whispered, his face ashen. "What's happened?" "We must summon the police," Hastings said, his voice steady despite the shock. "And no one is to enter this room until they arrive." The household descended into chaos. Lady Eleanor collapsed in tears, supported by Clara, whose own face was a mask of horror. Mrs. Langley took charge with surprising calm, directing the maids to prepare tea, while Dr. Langston insisted on examining the body, confirming what Hastings already knew. Sir Reginald had been struck with a single fatal blow to the head. As the local constable, a doorman named Inspector Grayson, arrived to secure the scene, Hastings sent a telegram to Poirot, urging his friend to come at once. The police, though competent, lacked the finesse required for a case that already felt layered with deception. By midday, the guests had been confined to the drawing-room, their alibis requested and their movements scrutinized. It was then that Hercule Poirot arrived, stepping from a hired car with his usual impeccable poise. His small, neat figure, clad in a perfectly tailored suit, seemed almost incongruous against the sombre backdrop of Blackthorn Hall. His moustache, waxed to perfection, gleamed in the sunlight, and his green eyes sparkled with curiosity as he greeted Hastings. "Mon ami," Poirot said, clasping Hastings' hand, "you have a talent for finding yourself in the midst of tragedy. Tell me everything." Hastings recounted the events. The dinner, the uneasy atmosphere, Sir Reginald's absence at breakfast, and the grim discovery in the study. Poirot listened intently, his head tilted slightly, his fingers steepled before him. "A locked cabinet," you say," he murmured, "and it was open when you found him. Most interesting. Inspector Grayson, a man of blunt manners and limited imagination, joined them, outlining his preliminary findings. "Looks like a robbery gone wrong," he said. "The cabinet was forced open, but nothing seems missing. Likely the thief panicked after striking Sir Reginald." Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile. "A thief who leaves treasures behind? No, Inspector, this is no simple robbery. The cabinet, it was a distraction, perhaps. We must look to the people, not the objects. He requested to see the body, and Grayson, though sceptical of the fancy foreign detective, complied." Poirot examined the scene with meticulous care, noting the position of the statuette, the angle of the wound, and the scattered papers. He paused by the open cabinet, his gloved fingers tracing the lock. "Curious," he murmured. "The damage is superficial. This lock was opened with a key, not forced." Hastings watched, marvelling at Poirot's ability to see what others missed. "You think the killer had access to the key?" he asked. "Précisément," Poirot replied, "and that, mon ami, narrows our circle considerably." The guests were summoned to the drawing-room, where Poirot began his inquiries. Lady Eleanor, still shaken, claimed to have retired early, hearing nothing unusual. Clara, trembling, said she had been in her room, reading. Warrender admitted to a late-night walk in the garden, alone. Dr. Langston had been in the library, studying Sir Reginald's collection of manuscripts. Crane, with a smirk, said he'd been writing in his room, though he offered no proof. Mrs. Langley and Miss Carter claimed to have been together, playing cards until midnight. Each alibi was plausible, yet Poirot's eyes gleamed as he listened, as if hearing not just the words but the silences between them. He asked seemingly trivial questions. The exact time of Clara's bedtime, the brand of Warrender's cigar, the title of Langston's manuscript. To Hastings, these seemed irrelevant, but he knew better than to question Poirot's methods. As the interviews concluded, Poirot stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice soft but commanding, "a crime has been committed, and the truth lies not in what you say, but in what you do not say. Hercule Poirot will find that truth. Rest assured." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, their secrets stirring like shadows in the candlelight. Hastings, watching them, felt a chill. The killer was among them, hidden in plain sight, and only Poirot's little grey cells could unmask them. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The morning after Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder dawned grey and heavy, with a mist that clung to Blackthorn Manor like a shroud. The Wiltshire air was damp, carrying the scent of wet earth and decaying. Leaves and the manor's towers loomed ghostly through the fog. Inside, the atmosphere was no less oppressive. The guests moved about with the wariness of actors in a play they did not fully understand, their every glance tinged with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, was undeterred by the gloom. He stood in the dining-room at precisely 8:01 a.m., impeccably, dressed in a charcoal suit, his moustache waxed to perfection, sipping a cup of café au lait, prepared to his exact specifications by the manor's beleaguered cook. Captain Hastings, seated across from him, pushed his untouched eggs about his plate, his appetite dulled by the previous night's horrors. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, How can you be so calm? A man's been murdered and we're surrounded by suspects, any one of whom might be a killer. Doesn't it unsettle you?" Poirot set down his cup with a delicate clink. "Mon ami, to be unsettled is to lose clarity. The mind of Hercule Poirot, it is like a mirror, calm, reflective, undistorted. The murder, it is a fact. The suspects, they are pieces of a puzzle. And I shall arrange them until the picture is clear." Before Hastings could reply, Inspector Grayson entered, his face flushed with the exertion of coordinating his small team of constables. "Mr. Poirot," he said, "I've had my men search the grounds and the manor. No sign of forced entry, no footprints in the garden, nothing stolen except Sir Reginald's life. I'm inclined to think it's an inside job, one of this lot." He jerked his thumb toward the drawing room, where the guests were gathering. "Inside job, you say?" Poirot's tone was polite but probing. "And what, Inspector, is your theory of the motive?" Grayson shrugged. "Money, most likely. Sir Reginald was rich, and that codex is worth a fortune. Or maybe it's personal, family, squabbles, jealousies. I've seen it before." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Money, jealousy, these are common threads, but not the only ones. Tell me, have you examined the blotting paper from the desk?" Grayson blinked. "Blotting paper? It's just a scrap. What's that got to do with anything?" "Everything, Inspector, has to do with something," Poirot replied. "If you will permit, I shall begin my own inquiries. Hastings, come. We have work to do." Their first stop was the library, now cordoned off but accessible to Poirot thanks to Grayson's grudging permission. The room was much as they had left it, though the body had been removed to the village morgue for examination. The Liber Veritatis remained on its velvet stand, its presence almost accusatory. Poirot approached the desk, retrieving the blotting paper with a pair of tweezers and holding it to the light. "Hastings, observe," he said, tilting the paper so the reversed script was visible. "The ink is fresh, pressed within hours of the murder. It appears to be a fragment of a letter or note. We must mirror it to read its secrets." With a small hand mirror from his pocket, a tool Hastings had long since ceased to find surprising, Poirot deciphered the text. It read, "Must be stopped. Codex. Danger." The words were incomplete, smudged, but their implication was clear. A warning, perhaps, Hastings ventured, or a threat. Perhaps both, Poirot mused. But to whom was it addressed, and by whom was it written? This we shall discover. Next, Poirot examined the letter opener, now bagged by Grayson's men, but available for inspection. Its blade was clean of fingerprints, wiped meticulously, suggesting premeditation rather than a spontaneous act. The angle of the wound, Poirot noted, indicated a right-handed assailant of average height, striking with force but precision. "Not a crime of passion, Hastings," he said. "This was calculated." Leaving the library, Poirot and Hastings began their interviews, starting with Lady Eleanor Ashbourne. They found her in the morning room, her sapphire gown replaced by a sombre black dress, her face pale but composed. She sat by a window, gazing out at the mist-shrouded gardens, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Madam," Poirot began, bowing slightly, "I regret the necessity of these questions, but truth, it is a stern taskmaster. Tell me, What was your relationship with your husband? Lady Eleanor's lips trembled, but her voice was steady. Reginald was a good man, Mr. Poirot, but distant. His passion was his collection, not his family. We had our disagreements, as all couples do, but I loved him. And last night at 11:45. Poirot's tone was gentle but insistent. I was in my room, as I told Inspector Grayson. I retired early, around 11 Fouls, after the library viewing. I heard nothing until Beatrice's scream. Poirot nodded, his eyes noting the slight tremor in her hands. And the Liber Veritatis, did it cause tension in the household? She hesitated. Reginald was obsessed with it. He believed it held secrets, codes perhaps, or prophecies. He spoke of it as a legacy, but also a burden. I didn't understand his fixation. Next, they spoke to Julian Ashbourne, who was found in the billiard room, idly rolling a cue ball across the green felt. His dark eyes were defiant, but there was a nervousness in his movements, a twitch of the jaw that betrayed unease. Mr. Ashbourne, Poirot said, your father. He was a man of wealth and influence. Did you share his passion for the Codex, Julian? Snorted. That old book. It was his madness, not mine. He'd rather spend a fortune on dusty pages than give me a decent allowance. We argued about it, often. And last night, Poirot pressed. You were here, alone? Yes, Julian snapped. I was practicing. I didn't hear anything until the scream. Poirot's gaze lingered on the billiard table, noting a faint chalk mark near the edge, as if something had been hastily brushed away. Merci, monsieur. We shall speak again. The interviews continued through the morning. Dr. Margaret Langley, in her scholarly bluntness, admitted to professional envy from rivals, but insisted she had no personal grudge against Sir Reginald. Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw, questioned separately, maintained their story of discussing business in the conservatory, though Poirot noted Crane's overly polished demeanour and Clara's tendency to glance away when pressed about details. Ernest Whitby, the solicitor, was nervous, his answers clipped, as if he feared saying too much. Beatrice Lyle, still shaken, repeated her story of hearing muffled voices, adding that one might have been a woman's, though she couldn't be certain. By noon, Poirot and Hastings retired to the terrace for a brief respite. The mist had lifted slightly, revealing the manicured lawns and the distant silhouette of a maze, its hedges dark and foreboding. Hastings lit a cigarette, his brow furrowed. Poirot, they're all hiding something, he said. Julian's angry, Eleanor's evasive, and those two, Crane and Henshaw, they're thick as thieves. But where's the motive? Poirot smiled faintly. The motive, Hastings, is like the mist. It obscures, but it will clear. Each of them has a secret, a thread that connects to the Codex or to Sir Reginald. The blotting paper, the wiped letter, opener, the voices Beatrice heard. These are the keys. We must now test the alibis, for one of them is a lie. As they returned to the manor, a constable approached, breathless. Mr. Poirot, we've found something in the garden, a cigarette, case, silver, initialed V.C. It was near the library window. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Victor Crane, perhaps, or another clue to mislead us. Bring it to me, and we shall see. The investigation was deepening, the threads of suspicion weaving a complex web. Hercule Poirot, with his unerring logic and keen observation, was only beginning to unravel the secrets of Blackthorn Manor, where every shadow held a clue, and every clue a lie. Chapter 4. The Questions. Begin, the afternoon light filtered weakly through the tall windows of Blackthorn Manor, casting long shadows across the parquet floors. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and wax polish, mingled with the lingering tension of the previous night's tragedy. Hercule Poirot, ever the master of method, had requested the use of the manor's study, a smaller oak-panelled room adjacent to the library, for his interviews. Its intimacy suited his purpose, to probe, to observe, and to uncover the contradictions hidden in the words and gestures of the suspects. Captain Hastings sat beside him, notebook in hand, ready to record every detail, though he privately admitted to feeling a touch overwhelmed by the complexity of the case. Poirot, by contrast, was in his element, his green eyes alight with the thrill of the chase. He had arranged for each guest to be questioned individually, believing that isolation would loosen tongues and reveal truths that group dynamics might conceal. "Mon ami," Poirot said, adjusting his cufflinks with precision, "in the art of interrogation one must listen not only to what is said, but to what is not said. The pause, the glance, the tremor, these are the brush-strokes of guilt." Hastings nodded, though he privately wondered if Poirot's confidence bordered on arrogance. "Right, but where do we start? That cigarette case with VC, surely it points to Victor Crane." Poirot's moustache twitched. Perhaps Hastings, perhaps. But a clue so obvious is often a deception. "We shall begin with Mademoiselle Beatrice Lyle, for her scream was the first note in this symphony of crime." Beatrice entered the study, her delicate frame swathed in a grey shawl, her eyes red-rimmed from sleeplessness or tears. She sat hesitantly, her hands twisting in her lap, and Poirot offered her a reassuring smile. "Mademoiselle Lyle," he began, his voice soft yet commanding, "you have suffered a great shock, but I must ask you to recall the moments before you screamed. You mentioned hearing voices in the library. Can you describe them further?" Beatrice swallowed, her voice barely audible. I was walking down the corridor, heading to my room. It was just past 11:30, I think. I heard voices, low, urgent. One was deep, a man's, I'm sure. The other, it might have been a woman, but it was so muffled I couldn't tell. They seemed to be arguing, but the words were indistinct. Poirot leaned forward slightly. "And the thud you heard? Describe it, s'il vous plaît." "It was sharp, like something heavy falling, a book perhaps, or a body." She shuddered. "I looked through the library door, which was ajar, and saw Sir Reginald slumped over the desk. I screamed and ran to fetch help." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The door, it was ajar, you are certain?" "Yes," Beatrice said, nodding. "I didn't touch it. I just looked inside and saw him." "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful." Poirot dismissed her gently, but as she left, he turned to Hastings. "The door ajar, Hastings. This is significant. A murderer does not leave a door open unless they wish to be seen, or unless they were interrupted." Next came Victor Crane, the publisher, whose polished demeanour seemed undimmed by the morning's grim events. He carried the silver cigarette case, initialed VC, which he handed to Poirot with a wry smile. "I believe your constable found this. It's mine, I'm afraid. I must have dropped it during a stroll in the garden earlier." Poirot examined the case, its surface gleaming under the study's lamplight. "A fine piece, monsieur. And you say you dropped it. When?" "Yesterday afternoon," Crane replied smoothly. "I often walk the grounds when I need to think. Publishing is a stressful business, Mr. Poirot." "And at 11:45 last night?" Poirot's tone was deceptively casual. "In the conservatory with Miss Henshaw, as I told you. We were discussing a potential book deal. A history of rare manuscripts, inspired by the Liber Veritatis." Poirot's gaze lingered on Crane's hands, which were steady but bore faint ink stains on the fingers. "And you heard nothing? No voices, no scream, until Mademoiselle Lyle's cry?" "Nothing," Crane said firmly. "The conservatory is at the far end of the manor. It's quite isolated." Poirot nodded, dismissing him with a polite bow. As Crane left, Hastings whispered, "He's too smooth, Poirot. That cigarette case, it's too convenient, don't you think?" "Convenient, oui," Poirot agreed. "But convenience is not always truth. We shall see." Clara Henshaw was next, her sharp features and quick eyes suggesting a mind always at work. She confirmed Crane's alibi, describing their conversation in the conservatory in detail. Perhaps too much detail, Hastings thought. When asked about her interest in the Codex, she admitted to wanting to write an exposé on its rumoured prophecies, but denied any hostility toward Sir Reginald. "Reginald was kind enough to let me view the Codex," she said. "Why would I harm him?" "Why, indeed?" Poirot murmured, his eyes noting the way her pen tapped nervously against her notebook. Dr. Margaret Langley followed, her scholarly air tempered by a guardedness that Poirot found intriguing. She spoke of the Codex with reverence, but admitted to tensions with Sir Reginald over its authentication. "He was secretive about its origins," she said. "I suspected he'd acquired it through less than legal channels, but I had no proof." "And your whereabouts at 11:45? Poirot asked. "In my room, reading," she replied. "I retired early to study my notes." Poirot's questions grew sharper with Julian Ashbourne, whose temper flared under scrutiny. "I told you I was in the billiard room," he snapped. "I didn't see my father after dinner. We weren't close, but I didn't kill him. And yet, monsieur, you argued with him often," Poirot said, "about money, about the Codex, about your future. Did he threaten to cut you off?" Julian's jaw tightened. "He threatened a lot of things. Doesn't mean I stabbed him." Eleanor, questioned last, was composed but distant, her answers measured. She reiterated her alibi, retiring to her room at 11:00, and spoke of Sir Reginald's growing obsession with the Codex. "He said it held secrets that could ruin reputations," she admitted. "I thought he was exaggerating." Poirot's final interview was with Ernest Whitby, the solicitor, whose nervous demeanour was more pronounced than ever. He confirmed drafting a new will for Sir Reginald, but claimed it was routine, with no major changes. "I was in the smoking room," he said, his voice trembling. "I heard nothing until the scream." As the interviews concluded, Poirot and Hastings returned to the study to review their findings. Poirot spread a sheet of paper on the desk, sketching a rough timeline of the evening's events. 11:30. Voices heard in the library. 11:45. Sir Reginald's death. 11:47. Beatrice's scream. He marked each suspect's stated location, noting discrepancies in timing and proximity. "Hastings," Poirot said, tapping the timeline. The alibis. They are like a house of cards, seemingly stable, but one push and they collapse. The cigarette case, the voices, the blotting paper. These are pieces of the puzzle, but they do not yet fit. What about the codex? Hastings asked. Could someone have killed him to keep its secrets hidden? Possible, mon ami, Poirot said, but secrets are kept by the living, not the dead. We must look to the human heart, its jealousies, its fears, its desires. Tomorrow we shall examine the grounds and the library again. For now, let us dine, for even the little grey cells require sustenance. As they joined the guests for her subdued dinner, the manor seemed to pulse with unspoken accusations. Poirot's calm exterior belied the storm of deduction within, as he watched each suspect, knowing that one among them held the key to Sir Reginald's murder, a key he was determined to find. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The second day at Blackthorn Manor dawned with a pale sun struggling to pierce the persistent Wiltshire mist, casting the estate in a dreamlike haze. The air inside the manor was no less clouded, thick with suspicion and the weight of unspoken truths. Hercule Poirot, ever the beacon of clarity amidst chaos, sat in the study. His breakfast tray of perfectly boiled eggs and toast, arranged with geometric precision. Captain Hastings, less composed, paced the room, his mind racing with the details of the case. "Poirot," Hastings said, pausing by the window, "this business with the cigarette case bothers me. Victor Crane admitted it's his, but it was found so conveniently near the library window. It's almost too perfect, don't you think? Like someone planted it to point the finger at him." Poirot dabbed his lips with a napkin, his expression serene. "Mon ami, you have stumbled upon the art of the red herring, a clue designed to mislead, to distract from the truth. The cigarette case, it is indeed suspicious, but not because it is there, but because it is meant to be found. We must ask, who benefits from casting suspicion on Monsieur Crane?" Hastings frowned. "Well, the real killer, I suppose. But who? They all have alibis, shaky as they are." "Shaky, oui," Poirot agreed, his green eyes gleaming. "And it is in the shakiness that we find the cracks. Today we shall test these alibis and probe deeper into the motives. The little grey cells, they sense a pattern, but it is not yet clear." Their morning began with a return to the library, where Inspector Grayson's men had completed their initial sweep. The Liber Veritatis remained on its velvet stand, untouched, its ancient pages seeming to mock the modern tragedy that had unfolded beside it. Poirot examined the room with renewed focus, noting the position of the furniture, the heavy curtains and the brass clock, still frozen at 11:50. He paused at the window near where the cigarette case was found, inspecting the sill and frame. "No signs of forced entry," he murmured. The window was locked from the inside, as Grayson confirmed, yet the cigarette case was outside. Curious, non? Hastings nodded. Could someone have tossed it out to make it look like Crane fled the scene? "Possible," Poirot said, "but unlikely. The ground is soft from the rain, yet there are no footprints near the window. The case was placed, not thrown. We shall keep this in mind." Their next task was to verify the alibis, starting with the conservatory, where Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw claimed to have been at the time of the murder. The conservatory, A glass-walled haven filled with exotic plants was indeed isolated, its position at the manor's far end making it difficult to hear sounds from the library. Poirot paced the tiled floor, noting a single muddy footprint near the door, faint but distinct and not yet documented by Grayson's team. "Hastings," Poirot said, crouching to examine the print. "This is recent, perhaps from last night. The soil matches the garden path. Someone entered or left the conservatory, yet Crane and Henshaw claim they were here, undisturbed. Could it be one of them?" Hastings asked. "Or neither?" Poirot replied. "We must not assume. Let us speak to them again." They found Victor Crane in the drawing-room, polishing his cigarette case with a handkerchief, his smile as polished as ever. "Mr. Poirot," he said, "I trust you're making progress. I'd hate to think my little trinket has caused undue suspicion." Poirot's gaze was unwavering. "Monsieur Crane, you say you were in the conservatory with Mademoiselle Henshaw from 11:00 until the scream. Yet I find a footprint, fresh, in the conservatory. Did you step outside, perhaps?" Crane's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "Not at all. Clara and I were deep in discussion. Perhaps a servant passed through earlier." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone neutral. "And your interest in the Liber Veritatis? It was purely professional?" "Of course," Crane replied. "A book like that could make a publisher's fortune. Sir Reginald and I were negotiating its publication, though he was reluctant to share details. Clara Henshaw, questioned next, corroborated Crane's story, but added a new detail. "I did step out briefly," she admitted, her eyes flicking to the side. "Around 11:20 I needed air. I walked to the garden path, but I was back within 10 minutes. Victor was still in the conservatory when I returned." Poirot's eyebrow rose. "And you saw no one, heard nothing?" "Nothing," Clara said, though her fingers tightened around her pen. The interviews continued, each suspect reinforcing their alibi while revealing subtle cracks. Julian Ashbourne, questioned about the billiard room, grew defensive when Poirot noted the chalk mark on the table. "I was practicing, I told you," he snapped. "What's a bit of chalk got to do with it?" "Everything, monsieur, is significant," Poirot replied. "The chalk, it is fresh, yet you say you played alone. Who else was there?" Julian's face reddened, but he said nothing more. Lady Eleanor, when pressed about her early retirement, admitted to taking a sleeping draught, which might explain her failure to hear anything before the scream. Dr. Langley, questioned about her notes, produced a notebook filled with scholarly jottings, but Poirot noticed a page torn out, its edges jagged. "A missing page, mademoiselle?" he asked. Dr. Langley flushed. I discarded a draft. It was irrelevant." Poirot smiled faintly. "We shall see." Ernest Whitby, the solicitor, was the most nervous, his hands trembling as he described his time in the smoking room. I was reading," he insisted. "Just a legal journal. I didn't hear anything until Beatrice screamed." "And the will you drafted for Sir Reginald?" Poirot asked. "You said it was routine, yet such things, they often stir motives, no?" Whitby paled. "It was standard, I swear it." By mid-afternoon, Poirot and Hastings retired to the study to review their findings. Poirot spread out his timeline, adding new details. The muddy footprint, the torn page, the chalk mark, and Clara's brief absence. "The red herrings multiply," he said. The cigarette case points to Crane, yet Clara's walk places her near the garden. The chalk mark suggests another presence in the billiard room, and the torn page hints at a secret Dr. Langley wishes to hide. Hastings rubbed his temples. It's a muddle, Poirot. Everyone's lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. And that codex, why leave it behind if it's so valuable? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, Hastings, is the question. The Liber Veritatis is the sun around which this mystery orbits, yet it remains untouched. Perhaps it is not the book itself, but what it represents. A secret, a threat, a legacy. We must look closer at the relationships, the grudges, the fears. As they prepared to join the guests for tea, a constable arrived with news. Mr. Poirot, we found something else in the garden. A piece of fabric, caught on a rosebush near the library window. It's silk, blue, like Lady Eleanor's gown from last night. Poirot's expression was unreadable. Most interesting. Bring it to me, and we shall compare it to Madame Ashbourne's wardrobe. The web of suspicion tightened, each clue a thread pulling the suspects closer together. Poirot, with his unerring logic, knew that the red herrings were but distractions from the truth, a truth he was determined to uncover, no matter how cleverly it was concealed. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The late afternoon at Blackthorn Manor carried a chill that seeped through the stone walls, as if the house itself mourned Sir Reginald Ashbourne's death. The mist had thickened, curling around the estate like a living thing, and the guests moved with the wariness of those who sensed eyes watching from every shadow. Hercule Poirot, however, remained impervious to the gloom, his mind a beacon of clarity as he sifted through the growing pile of clues. Captain Hastings, ever his faithful shadow, followed him to the study, where Poirot had requested the newly discovered piece of blue silk be brought for examination. Poirot, Hastings said, holding the delicate fabric between his fingers. This silk? It's a dead ringer for Lady Eleanor's gown from last night. Surely this places her near the library window at the time of the murder. Poirot, seated at the desk, examined the silk under a magnifying glass. His movements precise, as a surgeon's. Mon ami, appearances, they are often deceptive. This silk, it is indeed fine, like Madame Ashbourne's gown. But we must not leap to conclusions. A clue, it is like a single note in a symphony. It must be heard in context to reveal its meaning. He set the silk aside and turned his attention to the blotting paper which he had carefully preserved. Using his small mirror, he re-examined the smudged words. Must be stopped. Codex. Danger. The ink was dark, fresh, and the handwriting angular, suggesting haste or agitation. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he traced the letters with a gloved finger. This note, he said, it was written by Sir Reginald, I am certain. The pen on the desk, it matches the ink. But to whom was he writing, and why was it not sent? The blotting paper captures the echo of his final thoughts. Hastings. We must find the original letter. Hastings frowned. But the library was searched, Poirot. No letter was found. Précisément, Poirot replied. And that is the clue. The absence of the letter is as telling as its presence would be. Someone removed it, perhaps to conceal its contents. Their conversation was interrupted by Inspector Grayson, who entered with a brusque nod. Mr. Poirot, we've checked Lady Eleanor's wardrobe. The gown from last night has a tear at the hem. Matches the silk we found. She's got some explaining to do." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Merci, Inspector. We shall speak with her presently. But first I wish to examine the library window once more. There is a detail, I think, that we have overlooked." They returned to the library, where the air still carried the faint metallic tang of blood. Though the room had been tidied by Grayson's men, Poirot knelt by the window, his magnifying glass in hand, inspecting the latch and sill. He paused, his fingers brushing a tiny speck of white powder caught in the window frame's groove. "Hastings," he said, carefully collecting the powder. With a small brush, "This is chalk, like that found on the billiard table. It is faint, but unmistakable. Someone stood here, perhaps to open the window, and carried chalk from the billiard room." "Julian!" Hastings exclaimed. "He was in the billiard room, and we saw that chalk mark on the table. Could he have come here?" Poirot's expression was enigmatic. "Possible, but we must not assume. The chalk, it is a thread that connects, but to whom? Let us speak to Madame Ashbourne. Lady Eleanor was found in the morning room. Her black morning dress a stark contrast to her pale complexion. She rose as they entered, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes wary. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, have you found something?" Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, a piece of silk blue was found near the library window. It matches your gown from last night, which, I understand, is torn. Can you explain this?" Lady Eleanor's breath caught, but she recovered quickly. I was in the garden earlier that evening before dinner. I must have caught my dress on the roses. I didn't notice the tear until later." "At what time were you in the garden?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but probing. "Perhaps 8, she said. "I needed air. The codex, Reginald's obsession. It was all so overwhelming." "And at 11:45 you were in your room, as you said?" "Yes," she replied firmly. "I took a sleeping draught and heard nothing until Beatrice's scream." Poirot nodded, his eyes noting the slight tremor in her voice. "Merci, madame. We shall trouble you no further for now." As they left, Hastings whispered, "She's lying, Poirot. That tear wasn't from hours earlier. It's too fresh. And her story about the sleeping draught sounds convenient." "Convenient, oui," Poirot said. "But convenience is not always falsehood. We must test her story against the others." Their next stop was the billiard room, where Poirot examined the table more closely. The chalk mark, faint but distinct, was near the edge, as if someone had rested a cue or hand there. He found a small pile of chalk dust in a corner, suggesting recent use. "Julian claims he was alone," Poirot said, "yet this chalk appears elsewhere. We must speak to him again." Julian was found in the stables brushing down a horse with unnecessary vigour. His temper flared at Poirot's approach. "What now, Mr. Poirot? I've told you everything." "Not everything, monsieur." Poirot said, "The chalk from the billiard room. It is found on the library window. Were you there last night?" Julian's hand froze on the brush. "I told you I was playing billiards. I didn't go near the library, and yet the chalk suggests otherwise," Poirot said. "Perhaps you saw something, heard something?" Julian's eyes darted away. "I didn't see anything. I was alone." Poirot dismissed him. but his expression was thoughtful as they returned to the manor. "He is hiding something, Hastings. The chalk. It links him to the library, but not necessarily to the murder. We must consider the timing." Back in the study, Poirot reviewed his notes, adding the chalk and silk to his growing list of clues. He sketched a map of the manor, marking the library, conservatory, billiard room, and smoking room, plotting each suspect's claimed location. At 11:45, "The voices Beatrice heard," he said. "One male, one possibly female. The chalk, the silk, the missing letter. These are not random. They point to a sequence, a moment of collision." Hastings rubbed his chin. What about Dr. Langley's torn page? Could it be the letter? "A good thought, mon ami," Poirot said. "We shall ask her to produce her notebook again. But first, we must consider the Liber Veritatis. Its presence, untouched, is the greatest puzzle. Why kill for a book and leave it behind?" As evening approached, Poirot requested a meeting with Dr. Langley. She arrived, her scholarly composure strained, her notebook clutched tightly. "Mr. Poirot," she said, "I've told you everything. My notes are academic, nothing more." "And the torn page?" Poirot asked. "You said it was a draft. May I see the notebook?" Reluctantly, she handed it over. Poirot flipped through it, pausing at the jagged edge where a page had been removed. "This tear, it is fresh. What did the page contain, mademoiselle?" Dr. Langley hesitated. "Just notes on the codex's provenance. I discarded them because they were speculative." Poirot's smile was faint. "Speculation, it can be dangerous, non? We shall speak again." As they prepared for dinner, Poirot's mind was a whirl of connections. Chalk, silk, voices, a missing letter. Each clue was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. The red herrings were multiplying, but Hercule Poirot knew that beneath the distractions lay the truth, waiting to be uncovered by his little grey cells. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The evening of the second day at Blackthorn Manor settled over the estate like a velvet curtain, the air heavy with the promise of rain. The grand dining room, where the guests had gathered for a subdued supper, seemed to pulse with unspoken accusations, each clink of silverware a reminder of the tension that bound them. Hercule Poirot, seated at the table with his customary precision, observed the company with the keenness of a hawk, his green eyes catching every fleeting glance, every nervous gesture. Captain Hastings beside him felt the weight of the case, pressing harder, the web of clues growing ever more tangled. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, leaning close. "We've got chalk, silk, a missing letter, and alibis that don't quite add up. But it's all so murky. Have you any idea who's behind it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of amusement or irritation. Hastings could never quite tell. "Mon ami, the truth, it is like a diamond buried in the earth. It requires digging, patience, and care. Tonight we shall uncover more of the lies that obscure it. Observe and listen." Dinner was a strained affair. The conversation stilted despite Lady Eleanor's attempts to maintain decorum. Julian Ashbourne barely touched his food, his gaze fixed on his wineglass, while Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw exchanged murmured words, their heads bent close. Dr. Margaret Langley ate with mechanical precision, her spectacles glinting as she avoided eye contact. Ernest Whitby, the solicitor, fidgeted with his napkin, and Beatrice Lyle, pale and silent, seemed to shrink into her chair. As the meal concluded, Poirot rose, his small stature commanding the room's attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice calm but resonant, "a crime has been committed, and each of you holds a piece of the truth. I ask you now to consider, what have you withheld? A secret, a grudge, a moment of weakness? The little grey cells, they sense the weight of your silence." A ripple of unease passed through the room. Lady Eleanor's hand tightened on her glass, and Julian's jaw clenched. Clara Henshaw's pen paused mid-scribble, and Victor Crane's smile faltered. Poirot continued, his tone deceptively mild. "Tonight I shall ask questions that may discomfort. But truth, it is not always comfortable." He began with Dr. Langley, whose torn notebook page had piqued his interest. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you claim the missing page was a draft, discarded, yet the tear is fresh, and your notes, they are meticulous. What did you write that you did not wish others to see?" Dr. Langley's face flushed, her scholarly composure cracking. "I told you it was speculative, about the codex's origins. Sir Reginald hinted it came from a private collector, possibly through dubious means. I wrote it down, then tore it out. It was unprofessional." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And where is this page now?" "I burned it," she said quickly, "in my room's fireplace, after dinner." Hastings glanced at Poirot, expecting a challenge, but the detective merely nodded. "Merci. We shall verify this." Next, Poirot turned to Victor Crane, whose cigarette case remained a point of contention. "Monsieur Crane, you say you dropped your case in the garden yesterday afternoon. Yet the ground was wet, and the case is pristine. How do you explain this?" Crane's smile was smooth, but his fingers drummed lightly on the table. "I must have been mistaken about the time. Perhaps it was earlier, before the rain." "Or perhaps," Poirot said, "it was placed there later, to divert suspicion. You and Mademoiselle Henshaw, you are close, no? Did you discuss more than publishing in the conservatory?" Clara Henshaw's eyes flashed. "That's absurd, Mr. Poirot. Victor and I are colleagues. Our conversation was professional. Yet you left the conservatory briefly," Poirot pressed, "to the garden where the cigarette case was found. Did you see Monsieur Crane there?" "No," Clara said firmly, but her voice wavered. "I was alone." Poirot's gaze shifted to Julian Ashbourne, whose temper was visibly fraying. "Monsieur Ashbourne, the chalk on the billiard table and the library window, it suggests a connection. You claim you were alone, yet the evidence says otherwise. Who was with you?" Julian slammed his fist on the table, startling Beatrice. "I told you I was alone. I don't know about any chalk. You're grasping at straws, Poirot." "Grasping, no," Poirot said calmly. "Observing. The chalk, it does not lie. But people, they do." The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling like dust. Then, unexpectedly, Ernest Whitby spoke, his voice trembling. I must confess something. Sir Reginald's new will, it wasn't routine. He changed it 2 days ago, disinheriting Julian." A gasp rippled through the room. Julian's face turned ashen, and Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. "Ernest, how could you?" she whispered. Whitby shrank under their gazes. "I had to say it. Mr. Poirot. You'd find out anyway." Sir Reginald was furious with Julian's debts. He left the estate to Eleanor, with a trust for the Codex's preservation. Julian leapt to his feet, his chair scraping the floor. "You lying weasel! Father would never—" He stopped, his breath ragged, and stormed from the room. Poirot watched him go, his expression unreadable. "Monsieur Whitby, this is most revealing. Why did you not mention this earlier?" I was afraid," Whitby stammered. "Julian has a temper, and Sir Reginald made me promise secrecy." The revelation shifted the room's dynamic, suspicion, now swirling around Julian like a storm. Poirot dismissed the guests, but not before requesting Lady Eleanor's gown for further examination, and asking Dr. Langley to show him her fireplace. As the group dispersed, Hastings leaned close. "Poirot, this changes everything. Julian had a motive, disinheritance, and that temper of his." "Oui, Hastings," Poirot said, "but a motive is not a murder. Julian's anger, it is real, but is it guilt? We must verify Whitby's claim about the will. And the torn page, did Dr. Langley truly burn it?" They visited Dr. Langley's room, where the fireplace held a small pile of ash. Poirot sifted through it with a poker, finding a fragment of paper, charred but legible, bearing the words "Production, Intishehi Meki." Provenance, black market. He pocketed it, his eyes gleaming. She spoke the truth in part. But what else did that page contain? Next, they examined Lady Eleanor's gown, laid out in the study. The tear at the hem matched the silk found in the garden, but Poirot noted its clean edges. "This tear, it is deliberate," he said, "not caught on a rose, but cut, perhaps to mislead. Madame Ashbourne, she is cleverer than she appears." As night fell, Poirot and Hastings reviewed their findings in the study. The will, the torn page, the chalk, the silk, all pointed to a web of lies, each suspect hiding something. "The Codex," Poirot said. "It is the key, yet it remains untouched. Why? Because the murder is not about possession, but about what? The Codex represents a secret worth killing for." Hastings shook his head. "But whose secret, Poirot? Julian's, Eleanor's, or someone else's?" Poirot smiled faintly. "That, mon ami, is what we shall discover. Tomorrow we tighten the net. The lies they are surfacing, and with them the truth. The manor settled into an uneasy sleep, its secrets buried deep, but Hercule Poirot's little grey cells were wide awake, piecing together the puzzle of Sir Reginald's murder, one lie at a time. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The third day at Blackthorn Manor broke with a storm. The sky bruised with dark clouds that unleashed a torrent of rain upon the Wiltshire Valley. The relentless patter against the manor's windows seemed to echo the growing unrest among its inhabitants, each of whom felt the tightening grip of suspicion. The dining room, where breakfast was served, was a tableau of strained faces, the clink of porcelain drowned by the thunder outside. Hercule Poirot, seated with his customary precision, sipped his café au lait, his green eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. Captain Hastings beside him sensed a shift in the air, a moment when the facade of civility might crack. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, "after last night's bombshell about the will, Julian's on edge. And Lady Eleanor, she's hiding, Something about that torn gown. Do you think we're close to breaking someone?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Mon ami, the human heart, it is like a dam under pressure. One small crack, and the truth floods forth. Today we apply that pressure, gently but firmly, and we shall see who breaks." The morning's agenda was clear. Poirot intended to confront the discrepancies in the suspects' stories, focusing on the emotional threads that bound them to Sir Reginald and the Liber Veritatis. The revelation of the new will had shifted suspicion toward Julian, but Poirot, ever cautious, refused to let one clue overshadow the others. The chalk, the silk, the missing letter, and the charred fragment of Dr. Langley's notebook were pieces of a puzzle that demanded careful assembly. Their first stop was the study, where Poirot had requested Ernest Whitby, the solicitor, to bring Sir Reginald's will for examination. Whitby arrived, his hands trembling as he produced a sealed envelope, its wax bearing the Ashbourne crest. "This is the new will, Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice barely steady. "Signed 2 days ago, as I mentioned." Poirot broke the seal with care, his gloved fingers unfolding the document. He read silently, his expression unreadable, then passed it to Hastings. The will confirmed Whitby's claim. Sir Reginald had disinherited Julian, leaving the estate to Lady Eleanor, and establishing a trust for the Codex's preservation under Dr. Langley's oversight. A small bequest was made to Beatrice Lyle, described as a gesture of familial duty. "This is explosive, Poirot," Hastings said. "Julian's motive is clear as day. No wonder he was furious last night." "Oui, but clarity can be deceptive," Poirot replied. "A motive so obvious invites scrutiny. We must verify the will's authenticity and speak to Monsieur Ashbourne." They found Julian in the billiard-room, his face haggard, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. He was chalking a cue with unnecessary force, the white powder dusting his fingers. "What now, Poirot?" he snapped. "Come to accuse me outright?" Poirot's tone was calm, almost soothing. "Monsieur, the will, it paints a picture of discord between you and your father. You were to be disinherited. Did you know this?" Julian's grip on the cue tightened, his knuckles white. "I suspected he might. We fought about money, always money. He thought I was reckless, but I never. I didn't kill him." His voice broke, and for the first time, Hastings saw a flicker of vulnerability in the young man's defiance. Poirot's eyes softened, but his questions were relentless. "The chalk on your hands, monsieur, it matches that found on the library window. Were you there, perhaps, to speak with your father?" "I told you, I was here," Julian shouted, slamming the cue on the table. A cloud of chalk dust rose, settling on his sleeve. "I didn't go near the library. Why won't you believe me?" "Because, monsieur," Poirot said, "the evidence, it speaks a different story. But fear not. I seek the truth, not your guilt." As they left Julian, Hastings noted the young man's trembling hands. "He's cracking, Poirot. That outburst, it's guilt, isn't it?" "Guilt, perhaps, but not necessarily of murder," Poirot said. "His anger is real, but so is his pain. We must look deeper." Their next encounter was with Lady Eleanor, summoned to the morning room. She stood by the fireplace, her black dress absorbing the light, her face a mask of composure that faltered under Poirot's scrutiny. "Madame," he began, The silk from your gown, torn deliberately, was found near the library window. You claimed to be in your room, yet the evidence places you in the garden. Can you explain?" Lady Eleanor's hands twisted her handkerchief, her voice low. I lied about the time. I was in the garden later, around 11, not 8 you. I couldn't sleep, even with the draught. I needed air, but I swear I didn't go near the library." "And the tear?" Poirot pressed. "It was cut, not caught." Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. "I don't know how it happened. I found the tear after dinner, when I changed. Someone must have done it to implicate me." She sank into a chair, her composure crumbling. "Reginald and we weren't happy, but I loved him. I'd never hurt him." Hastings, moved by her distress, glanced at Poirot, who remained impassive. "Madame," Poirot said, "your tears, they are sincere, but the truth, it is still hidden. Did you see anyone in the garden?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I thought I saw a shadow near the conservatory, a figure moving quickly, but it was dark and I couldn't be sure." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A shadow, you say? Most interesting." "Merci, madame." As they left, Hastings said, "She's breaking, Poirot. That shadow. Could it be Clara, who admitted to being in the garden?" "Possible," Poirot said, "but we must not rush. The emotional cracks, they reveal motives but also distractions. Let us speak to Mademoiselle Henshaw." Clara Henshaw was found in the library, ostensibly reviewing her notes, though her pen was idle. Her sharp features tightened as Poirot entered. "Mr. Poirot, I've told you everything. What more do you want?" "The truth, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "You were in the garden at 11:20, near the conservatory. Madame Ashbourne saw a shadow there. Was it you?" Clara's eyes flickered, with surprise, then defiance. "I told you I went for air. I didn't see Eleanor, and I didn't go near the library. You're fishing, Mr. Poirot." "Fishing? No," Poirot said. "I cast a net, and it catches lies. Your conversation with Monsieur Crane. Was it truly about publishing or something more personal?" Clara's cheeks flushed. "That's none of your business. Victor and I are colleagues, nothing more." Poirot dismissed her, but his mind was racing. Back in the study, he reviewed his notes, adding Lady Eleanor's shadow and Clara's evasiveness to the timeline. "The lies, they multiply," he said to Hastings. "Julian's anger, Eleanor's tears, Clara's secrecy, each reveals a piece of the heart. But the codex, it remains the enigma. Why kill for it, yet leave it behind?" Hastings rubbed his temples. "It's maddening, Poirot. Everyone's breaking, but no one's confessing. What's next?" "Next, mon ami, we set a trap," Poirot said, his voice low. "The murderer, they are close to revealing themselves. We must give them a push, a gentle push, but one that will expose the truth." As the storm raged outside, Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, weaving the threads of chalk, silk, and lies into a pattern that was beginning to take shape. The emotional turning point had arrived, and with it, the promise of revelation. Chapter 9. The Trap. The rain had ceased by the morning of the 4th day at Blackthorn Manor, leaving the air crisp and the ground sodden, the manicured lawns glistening under a weak sun. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with a nervous energy, as if the manor itself sensed the approaching climax of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The guests, weary from sleepless nights and relentless questioning, moved with the caution of those who knew the net was closing. Poirot, however, was as composed as ever, his impeccable suit and polished shoes a stark contrast to the dishevelled state of the suspects. Captain Hastings, trailing him to the study, felt a surge of anticipation. "Poirot," Hastings said, closing the door behind them, "you mentioned a trap last night. What's your plan? We've got motives galore, Julian's disinheritance, Eleanor's strained marriage, Crane and Henshaw's secrecy. But no one's cracked yet." Poirot adjusted his tie with a precise tug, his green eyes gleaming. "Mon ami, the trap, it is not a cage, but a mirror. We shall gather the suspects and reflect their lies back to them, applying the pressure of truth. The guilty one, they will falter, for the human heart cannot bear the weight of its own deception." Hastings frowned. "You mean a confrontation, like in the library, with everyone together?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, "but not in the library. That stage is too charged with death. We shall use the drawing room, where the fire casts light and shadow, revealing what is hidden. Tonight we shall provoke a reaction." Poirot spent the morning preparing, reviewing his notes and the physical evidence. The blue silk, the chalk dust, the charred notebook fragment, and the blotting paper with its cryptic message. He sent a constable to fetch the manor's floor plan, which he studied with care, marking the library, conservatory, billiard room, and the garden paths. "The geography of the crime," he told Hastings. "It is as important as the psychology. Each step, each moment, must align." By late afternoon, Poirot instructed Inspector Grayson to gather the guests in the drawing-room at 8 p.m. Grayson, though sceptical of Poirot's methods, complied, muttering about fancy theatrics. The guests were informed that Poirot had new findings to share, and the air buzzed with apprehension as the hour approached. At precisely 8 Gouquet, the drawing-room was a tableau of tension. The fire roared, casting flickering shadows across the tapestries, and the heavy curtains were drawn against the night. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly, her black dress absorbing the light. Julian leaned against the mantelpiece, his face a mask of defiance. Dr. Margaret Langley adjusted her spectacles, her notebook clutched like a shield. Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw sat close, their expressions guarded. Ernest Whitby fidgeted, with his cufflinks, and Beatrice Lyle, pale as ever, clutched her shawl. Poirot stood before them, his small stature commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and measured, "a murder has been committed, and the truth, it hides among you. Tonight I shall lay bare the facts, and we shall see who cannot face them." He began with the timeline, his words precise. At 11:30 p.m., Mademoiselle Lyle heard voices in the library. 2, one male, one possibly female. At 11:45, Sir Reginald was stabbed with a letter opener. At 11:47, Mademoiselle Lyle screamed, discovering the body. Each of you claims an alibi, yet the evidence tells a different story. He held up the piece of blue silk. "This, found near the library window, matches Madame Ashbourne's gown, torn deliberately. Madam, you claimed to be in your room, yet you admitted to being in the garden at 11:12. A shadow was seen near the conservatory. Was it you?" Lady Eleanor's lips parted, but she said nothing, her eyes wide with fear. Poirot turned to Julian, producing a small vial of chalk dust. Monsieur Ashbourne, chalk from the billiard room was found on the library window. You claim you were alone, yet the evidence suggests otherwise. Did you visit your father, perhaps to confront him about the will? Julian's fists clenched. I told you I didn't go near the library. Poirot's gaze shifted to Dr. Langley. Mademoiselle, your notebook lacks a page, torn out and partially burned. It spoke of the Codex's dubious provenance. Did you argue with Sir Reginald about its secrets? Dr. Langley's face flushed. I told you, it was speculative. I didn't see him that night. Next, Poirot addressed Crane and Henshaw. You claim to have been in the conservatory, yet a muddy footprint suggests someone left or entered. Mademoiselle Henshaw, you admitted to a walk in the garden. Monsieur Crane, your cigarette case was found conveniently near the library. A coincidence or a plant? Crane's smile was strained. I've explained the cigarette case. You're reaching, Poirot. Clara's eyes darted to Crane, then away. I was only gone a few minutes. I saw nothing. Finally, Poirot turned to Whitby. Monsieur, you revealed the new will, a motive for Monsieur Ashbourne. Yet you were nervous, hesitant. Did you know more than you told? Whitby's hands shook. I only did my duty. The will was Sir Reginald's decision. Poirot paced slowly, his voice rising. The Liber Veritatis, it is the heart of this mystery. Sir Reginald wrote a note. Must be stopped. Codex. Danger. To whom? Why was it not sent? Someone removed it, just as someone placed the cigarette case, tore the silk, spread the chalk. These are not accidents, but threads in a tapestry of deception. The room was silent, the crackle of the fire deafening. Then Beatrice Lyle, her voice trembling, spoke. Mr. Poirot, I didn't tell everything. The voices I heard, one was Sir Reginald's, I'm sure. The other, it sounded like Clara. Clara Henshaw gasped, her pen clattering to the floor. That's a lie! I was in the conservatory. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mademoiselle Lyle, you are certain? Beatrice nodded, tears welling. I didn't want to say because I was afraid. But it was her voice, sharp, arguing. Clara leapt to her feet. This is outrageous. I wasn't in the library. Victor, tell them. Crane's face was pale, but he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the floor. The room erupted in murmurs. Julian glaring at Clara, Lady Eleanor clutching her handkerchief, Dr. Langley staring in shock. Poirot raised a hand for silence. Enough! The trap, it is set. The truth, it begins to emerge. Mademoiselle Henshaw, you will explain your presence in the library, or the little grey cells. They will do it for you. Clara sank back into her chair, her defiance crumbling. I did speak to Sir Reginald, but only briefly, around 11:30. It was about the Codex, my article. He refused to cooperate, and I left. I swear, he was alive when I left. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. We shall see. For now, you are all dismissed, but know this. The truth, it cannot hide forever. As the guests dispersed, Hastings whispered, Good Lord, Poirot, you've done it. Clara was in the library. She's the killer. Poirot's smile was faint. Not so. Fast, mon ami. The trap has caught a lie, but not yet the murderer. Clara's admission, it is a crack, but the dam has not yet broken. Tomorrow we shall reveal the full picture. The drawing-room emptied, leaving only the fire's glow and the echo of Clara's confession. Poirot's trap had worked, but the final piece of the puzzle remained just out of reach, waiting for his little grey cells to seize it. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The fifth morning at Blackthorn Manor broke with a brittle clarity, the storm's aftermath leaving the sky a pale, unyielding blue. The manor, its stone walls glistening with dew, seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing the culmination of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The guests, summoned once more to the drawing-room at 10 p.m., wore expressions of dread and exhaustion, their nerves frayed by days of suspicion and Poirot's relentless probing. Captain Hastings, seated beside his friend, felt a thrill of anticipation, tempered by the nagging fear that the truth might remain elusive. "Poirot," Hastings whispered as they awaited the others, "Clara's admission last night. She was in the library with Sir Reginald. Surely that's the key. She's our murderer, isn't she?" Poirot, adjusting his cufflinks with meticulous care, gave a faint smile. "Mon ami, the key. It unlocks the door, but it does not tell us what lies beyond. Mademoiselle Henshaw's presence in the library is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. Today we shall reveal the truth step by step, and the guilty one will stand exposed." The drawing-room filled slowly, the fire crackling softly in the hearth, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill of anticipation. Lady Eleanor sat with her hands folded, her face a mask of composure. Julian Ashbourne slouched in a chair, his eyes dark with resentment. Dr. Margaret Langley clutched her notebook, her spectacles reflecting the firelight. Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw sat apart, their usual camaraderie strained, while Ernest Whitby fidgeted nervously, his gaze darting to the door. Beatrice Lyle, pale and trembling, seemed on the verge of collapse. Poirot rose, his small stature commanding the room's attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant, "a crime has been committed, a life taken, and the truth, it has been hidden in a web of lies and misdirection. But the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot, they have worked tirelessly, and now I shall reveal the story of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us begin with the facts. At 11:30 p.m., Mademoiselle Lyle heard voices in the library, one male, Sir Reginald's, and one possibly female, which she now identifies as Mademoiselle Henshaw's. At 11:45, Sir Reginald was stabbed with a letter opener. At 11:47, Mademoiselle Lyle screamed, discovering the body. The Liber Veritatis, the priceless codex, remained untouched. Why? He paused, letting the question hang. The clues, they are many. A piece of blue silk, torn from Madame Ashbourne's gown, chalk dust on the library window, matching that in the billiard room, a cigarette case, initialed V.C., found in the garden, a charred notebook fragment from Mademoiselle Langley, and a blotting paper with Sir Reginald's final words, mished. Must be stopped. Codex. Danger. These are not random, but threads in a tapestry of deception. Poirot turned to Clara Henshaw, whose face was pale but defiant. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you admitted to being in the library at 11:30, arguing with Sir Reginald about your article on the Codex. You claim you left him alive. Yet the voices were heated, and the timing, it is precise. Did you kill him? Clara's eyes flashed. No. I argued with him, yes. He refused to let me publish details about the Codex's origins. I left in a huff, but he was alive. Poirot nodded, then shifted to Lady Eleanor. Madame, the silk from your gown was found near the library window, torn deliberately. You claimed to be in your room, yet you admitted to being in the garden at 11:05 and saw a shadow. Was it Mademoiselle Henshaw or another? Lady Eleanor's hands trembled. I don't know. It was dark. I didn't kill Reginald. Poirot's gaze moved to Julian. Monsieur Ashbourne, the chalk on the library window links to the billiard room, where you claim you were alone. Your father disinherited you, a motive most compelling. Did you confront him, perhaps in anger? Julian's face reddened. I didn't go to the library. I was playing billiards alone. Poirot continued, addressing Victor Crane. Monsieur Crane, your cigarette case found near the library suggests involvement. You claim it was dropped earlier, yet it is pristine. Were you there, perhaps to steal the Codex? Crane's smile was tight. I told you, I was in the conservatory with Clara. The case was a coincidence. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he turned to Dr. Langley. Mademoiselle, your notebook's missing page spoke of the Codex's black market origins. Did you argue with Sir Reginald, fearing exposure? Dr. Langley's voice was sharp. I didn't see him that night. My notes were speculative, nothing more. Finally, Poirot addressed Whitby. Monsieur, you revealed the will, casting suspicion on Julian. Yet your nervousness, it suggests you know more. What do you hide? Whitby shrank back. Nothing. I only did my duty. Poirot stopped pacing, facing the group. The truth, it is this. Sir Reginald's murder was not about the Codex's value, but its secrets. The Liber Veritatis contains encrypted prophecies, which Sir Reginald believed could ruin reputations. He wrote a note warning someone must be stopped. But who? He held up the blotting paper. This note was written to Mademoiselle Langley. Sir Reginald suspected her of planning to expose the Codex's illicit origins, damaging his reputation. She confronted him in the library at 11:30. Not Mademoiselle Henshaw, whose voice was mistaken by Mademoiselle Lyle due to the muffled door. Dr. Langley gasped. That's preposterous! I was in my room. Non, Poirot said. The charred page in your fireplace confirms it. You argued with Sir Reginald, and when he threatened to destroy the Codex to protect his name, you stabbed him with the letter opener, wiping it clean. You tore the silk from Madame Ashbourne's gown, which you found in the laundry, and placed it in the garden, along with Monsieur Crane's cigarette case, which you took from the conservatory during your earlier visit. The chalk on the window, a misstep. You brushed against the billiard table while passing through to plant the clues. The room was silent, all eyes on Dr. Langley. She rose, her face pale, her voice shaking. You have no proof. This is all conjecture. Poirot's voice was calm but relentless. The proof, it is in the details. The torn page, the chalk, the silk, all point to you. You left the Codex, knowing its value would distract from your motive to silence Sir Reginald's threat to your career. Dr. Langley's composure shattered. He was going to burn it, she cried. Years of work, my reputation. He'd have ruined me. I didn't mean to kill him. It was a moment of panic. The room erupted in gasps. Inspector Grayson stepped forward, handcuffs ready, as Dr. Langley sank into her chair, sobbing. Poirot watched, his expression sombre but satisfied. "Hastings," he said quietly, "the little grey cells, they have prevailed. The truth, it is always there, waiting for those who seek it." As Grayson led Dr. Langley away, the guests dispersed, stunned by the revelation. Poirot stood by the fire, his work complete, the puzzle solved through logic, psychology, and the unerring precision of his mind. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The storm that had battered Blackthorn Manor for days had finally passed, leaving a serene stillness in its wake. The morning sun cast long golden rays across the Wiltshire Valley, illuminating the manor's ancient stonework with a warmth that seemed to soften its grim history. Inside, the atmosphere was one of quiet resolution, the shock of Dr. Margaret Langley's confession still reverberating among the guests. Hercule Poirot, his work complete, sat in the study, his small hands folded neatly over a cup of tisane, his green eyes reflective. Captain Hastings, seated opposite, felt a mix of relief and melancholy, the weight of the case lifting but leaving questions in its place. "Poirot," Hastings said, stirring his tea absently, "you've done it again. Dr. Langley, her confession, it was like watching a dam break. But how did you know it was her? The clues, they pointed everywhere." Poirot's moustache curved in a faint smile. "Mon ami, the clues, they are like stars in the night sky. Many, scattered, but forming a constellation when viewed with clarity. The little grey cells, they do not chase every light, but seek the pattern. Dr. Langley's motive, it was hidden in her fear, her ambition, her silence." Hastings leaned forward, eager for insight. "But the silk, the cigarette case, the chalk, how did you piece it together?" Poirot set down his cup, his movements deliberate. "Let us reflect, Hastings, on the method. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne was no act of passion, but a calculated strike, disguised by misdirection. The liber veritatis, it was the heart of the mystery, not for its value, but for what it represented, a threat to Dr. Langley's reputation." He rose, pacing slowly, his voice measured. "Consider the clues. The blue silk, torn from Madame Ashbourne's gown, was found near the library window. It was cut, not caught, suggesting intent to mislead. The cigarette case, initialed VC, was pristine despite the wet ground, indicating it was placed after the rain, not dropped earlier as Monsieur Crane claimed. The chalk dust, linking the billiard room to the library window, was a trace of movement, not accident. And the blotting, paper, must be stopped. Codex, danger! It was Sir Reginald's warning to Dr. Langley, whose research into the Codex's black market origins threatened his legacy. Hastings nodded, his mind retracing the case. And the charred notebook page. That was the clincher, wasn't it? "Oui," Poirot said. The fragment in Dr. Langley's fireplace confirmed her knowledge of the Codex's illicit past. She tore the page to hide her confrontation with Sir Reginald, but the ash betrayed her. Her alibi, that she was in her room, was undone by Mademoiselle Lyle's testimony of voices, one mistaken for Mademoiselle Henshaw's, but in truth Dr. Langley's, muffled by the library door. He paused, his gaze distant. "The human heart, Hastings, it is a complex thing. Dr. Langley, she was driven by fear. Fear that Sir Reginald would destroy the Codex, erasing her life's work. In a moment of panic, she struck, then wove a web of false clues to divert suspicion. The silk implicated Madame Ashbourne. The cigarette case pointed to Monsieur Crane. The chalk suggested Monsieur Julian. But the truth, it cannot be hidden from Hercule Poirot. Hastings shook his head, marvelling. It's brilliant, Poirot, but so tragic. She was a scholar, respected. To throw it all away for a book. Poirot's expression softened, not for a book, mon ami, but for what it meant. Ambition, pride, fear, these are the shadows that drive men and women to darkness. Dr. Langley, she saw her reputation, her legacy slipping away. The Codex was her triumph, and Sir Reginald's threat. To burn it was a blow she could not bear. They were interrupted by a soft knock. Lady Eleanor entered, her face pale but composed, her black morning dress replaced by a soft grey gown. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice steady. "I wanted to thank you. This nightmare, it's over, thanks to you." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, it is my duty to seek the truth, however painful. Your husband, he was a man of secrets, but his death, it is now understood." Lady Eleanor's eyes glistened. Reginald was consumed by that Codex. I didn't understand it, but I loved him. I wish I'd known what drove him. Poirot's tone was gentle. "The heart, it keeps its secrets, madame. But you must now look to the future. The manor, it is yours, and the Codex, it will be preserved as Sir Reginald wished." She nodded, a tear escaping, and left quietly. Hastings watched her go, then turned to Poirot. "What now, Poirot? The case is solved, but the manor feels haunted." Poirot smiled faintly. "Haunted, perhaps, by the echoes of human folly. But we, Hastings, we shall leave this place to its ghosts. The truth, it has been served, and that is enough." They spent the afternoon preparing to depart, Poirot ensuring that Inspector Grayson had all necessary evidence for Dr. Langley's trial. The guests, too, were dispersing, Julian to face his uncertain future, Crane and Henshaw to their publishing schemes, Whitby to his quiet solicitor's life, and Beatrice Lyle to her cousin's care. The Liber Veritatis was to be sent to a museum, its secrets safe, but its allure diminished. As they boarded their motor car, the manor receding into the mist, Hastings felt a pang of reflection. "Poirot, do you ever wonder about the people we leave behind? The lives we upend?" Poirot's eyes were thoughtful. "Always, mon ami. The detective, he uncovers truth, but he cannot heal the wounds it reveals. Yet, to live in lies is a greater wound. We give them clarity, and with it the chance to rebuild." The car rolled through the valley, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the road. Hercule Poirot, his work complete, sat in silence, his little grey cells at rest, ready for the next puzzle that fate would bring. Blackthorn Manor faded into the distance, its secrets laid bare, its story one more chapter in the endless book of human nature that Poirot so masterfully read. Chapter 12. The Unseen Motive. The journey back to London was a quiet one. The motor car humming through the winding Wiltshire lanes as the late afternoon sun cast golden streaks across the countryside. Blackthorn Manor was now a fading silhouette, its towers swallowed by the mist that clung to the valley. Hercule Poirot sat upright, his gloved hands resting on his lap, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the horizon. Captain Hastings beside him was restless, his mind still tangled in the threads of the case, despite its resolution. "Poirot," Hastings said, breaking the silence, "I can't help but feel we've missed something. Dr. Langley's confession, it ties up the clues, but it's so sudden. A scholar like her driven to murder over a book. It's almost too neat." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign Hastings recognized as the detective's quiet amusement. "Mon ami, you are perceptive, even when you doubt yourself. The case, it is solved, yet the heart of it, the unseen motive, lingers like a shadow. Dr. Langley killed Sir Reginald, oui, but why? Not merely for the codex, but for something deeper, something personal. The little grey cells, they are not yet at rest." Hastings frowned, turning to face his friend. "You mean there's more to it? But she confessed, Poirot. The silk, the chalk, the cigarette case, all pointed to her." "Précisément," Poirot said, his voice low. "The clues, they were perfect. Too perfect, perhaps. A confession, it can be a shield as much as a surrender. I suspect, Hastings, that Dr. Langley protects another, or hides a truth we have not yet uncovered." The words hung in the air, stirring unease in Hastings. Protecting someone? But who? And why confess if she's covering for another? Poirot's eyes gleamed. "That, mon ami, is what we must discover. Let us return to Blackthorn Manor. The truth, it is not yet fully revealed." Hastings blinked, startled. "Return? But we're halfway to London. Grayson's got Langley in custody, and the case is closed." Poirot shook his head. "The case, it is closed only when the heart of the matter is understood. I have overlooked a detail, a connection. We shall return, and we shall speak to Mademoiselle Lyle once more. Her scream, her testimony, it holds a key we have not turned." Reluctantly, Hastings instructed the driver to turn back, the car retracing its path through the darkening countryside. By the time they reached Blackthorn Manor, night had fallen, the estate's lanterns casting pools of light across the gravel drive. The remaining guests, Lady Eleanor, Julian, Victor Crane, Clara Henshaw, and Ernest Whitby, were surprised to see Poirot and Hastings, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Mr. Poirot," Lady Eleanor said, meeting them, "in the hall. I thought you'd left for London. Is something wrong?" Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, a small matter requires clarification. I must speak with Mademoiselle Lyle, and then perhaps we shall gather once more. The truth, it is like a book. One must read every page to understand the story." Beatrice Lyle was found in the morning room, her delicate frame hunched over a cup of tea, her eyes red from crying. She started at Poirot's entrance, her hands trembling. "Mr. Poirot, I thought it was over. Dr. Langley confessed. Oui, mademoiselle," Poirot said gently. "But your testimony, it troubles me. You heard voices. One you believed was Mademoiselle Henshaw's, but now we know it was Dr. Langley's. Yet you were certain. Why?" Beatrice's eyes darted away. I was mistaken. The voices were muffled, And I thought it was Clara, because I'd heard her arguing with Sir Reginald earlier that day about her article. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Earlier that day? You did not mention this before. Beatrice flushed, her voice barely audible. I was afraid. Clara's so forceful. I thought she might be involved, so when I heard the voice, I assumed it was hers. Poirot leaned forward, his tone soft but insistent. And the other voice, Sir Reginald's, how well did you hear it? It was clear, she said. He sounded angry, saying something about ruining everything. I didn't catch the rest. Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. As they left the morning room, he turned to Hastings. Her fear, it is genuine, but her mistake, it is not. She lied about the voice, perhaps to protect someone or to mislead. We must now revisit the library. In the library, now empty of its grim tableau, Poirot examined the desk once more, his fingers tracing the edges of the blotting paper. He paused, noticing a faint indentation in the wood, barely visible. Hastings, he said, fetch a pencil and paper. We shall rub this surface. Using a soft pencil, Poirot gently rubbed the paper over the desk, revealing faint traces of writing, numbers, not words. A code, he murmured, or perhaps a page reference. The Liber Veritatis. It holds more than prophecies. They retrieved the codex, still under lock and key, and opened it to the page indicated by the numbers, 147. There, tucked between the pages, was a folded letter, its edges worn but intact. Poirot unfolded it carefully, reading aloud. To Margaret Langley, I know your secret. The codex's origins must remain hidden, or we are both ruined. Meet me tonight. R.A. Hastings gasped. A secret? Poirot, this changes everything. Langley wasn't just protecting her career. She was protecting a shared secret with Sir Reginald. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Oui, mon ami. The codex. It was not just a book, but a bond. A dangerous one. Dr. Langley killed to silence Sir Reginald, but not for ambition alone. There is a deeper connection, perhaps a past transgression. We must confront her. With Grayson's permission, they visited Dr. Langley in the village jail, where she sat pale but composed in a small cell. Poirot held up the letter. Mademoiselle, this was found in the codex. You and Sir Reginald shared a secret. What was it? Dr. Langley's face crumpled, her voice a whisper. It was years ago. A theft. Reginald and I, we procured the codex from a black market dealer in Cairo. It was my idea. I was young, ambitious. He funded it, but if it came out, we'd both be disgraced. He wanted to burn it to protect his name. I couldn't let him. Poirot nodded, his expression sombre. And so you killed him, and confessed to protect this secret, knowing the codex would be preserved. She nodded, tears falling. I'm sorry. I couldn't lose everything. As they left the jail, Hastings shook his head. A shared crime, Poirot. It's heartbreaking. She threw away her life for a mistake from years ago. Poirot's voice was quiet. The past, it is a shadow that follows us, Hastings. Dr. Langley's motive was not just ambition, but shame. The truth, it is now complete. Back at the manor, Poirot shared the final details with the guests, ensuring the codex's safe transfer to a museum. As they prepared to leave once more, the unseen motive laid bare. Poirot's little grey cells rested, The puzzle fully solved. Chapter 13. The echoes of truth. The sixth day at Blackthorn Manor dawned with a quiet radiance, the Wiltshire sky clear and boundless, as if the heavens themselves had exhaled after the storm of secrets that had ravaged the estate. The manor, its ivy-clad walls bathed in morning light, stood as a silent witness to the unravelling of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder. Inside, the guests moved with a subdued air, their relief at the case's resolution tempered by the weight of Dr. Margaret, Langley's confession, and the deeper truth Poirot had uncovered. Hercule Poirot, ever the picture of composure, sat in the study, his tisane steaming gently, his green eyes reflective as he contemplated the human cost of the mystery. Captain Hastings, opposite him, felt a mix of awe and unease, the final pieces of the puzzle still settling in his mind. "Poirot," Hastings said, stirring his coffee, "you've done it again, pulled the truth from a tangle of lies. But that letter in the Codex, the shared secret between Langley and Sir Reginald, it's so tragic. A moment of greed years ago, and now a life ruined, another lost. Does it ever weigh on you, these endings?" Poirot set down his cup with precision, his moustache twitching faintly. "Mon ami, the truth, it is a double-edged sword. It brings justice, oui, but also pain. The detective, he cannot choose which to wield, only to seek what is true. Dr. Langley's crime, it was born of ambition and shame, but also of loyalty to a past she could not escape. This, it is the human condition." Hastings leaned back, his brow furrowed. "But the Codex, why leave it behind? If it was so dangerous, why not take it or destroy it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. The Liber Veritatis, it was not merely a book, but a symbol, a testament to Dr. Langley's triumph and her sin. To take it would be to admit her guilt. To destroy it would be to erase her legacy. She left it, hoping it would outlive her. Crime preserved in a museum, its secrets safe, but its value intact. Their conversation was interrupted by Inspector Grayson, who entered with a brisk nod. "Mr. Poirot, the paperwork's done. Langley's being transferred to London for trial. The Codex is packed for the museum, as you requested. I'll admit, I thought you were chasing shadows with all that chalk and silk business, but you've proved me wrong." Poirot bowed slightly. "Merci, Inspector. The shadows, they are where the truth hides. But tell me, have you spoken to the guests? Their reactions, they are important." Grayson shrugged. "They're shaken, but relieved, I'd say. Young Julian's still angry, but he's talking of selling the manor. Lady Eleanor's planning to leave for the continent. The others, Crane, Henshaw, Whitby, Miss Lyle, they're packing to go. Seems they want to put this behind them." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And yet the past, it does not let go so easily. I would speak to them one last time to ensure all is clear." The guests were gathered in the drawing-room, their faces a mix of weariness and resignation. Lady Eleanor stood by the window, her grey gown catching the light, her composure restored but fragile. Julian slouched in an armchair, his eyes distant. Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw sat apart, their earlier closeness replaced by a wary distance. Ernest Whitby fidgeted with his cufflinks, and Beatrice Lyle, her shawl drawn tight, looked as if she might fade into the wallpaper. Poirot stood before them, his small frame radiating authority. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice calm but resonant, "the mystery of Sir Reginald's death is solved, but its echoes remain. I wish to clarify the truth, so that you may leave this place with understanding, if not peace." He recounted the case with meticulous detail, beginning with the timeline. Beatrice's overheard voices at 11:30, Sir Reginald's death at 11:45, her scream at 11:47. He described the clues, the blue silk, deliberately torn from Lady Eleanor's gown, the cigarette case, placed to implicate Victor Crane, the chalk dust linking the billiard room to the library window, and the blotting paper revealing Sir Reginald's warning. The letter found in the Liber Veritatis, hidden on page 147, was the final piece exposing Dr. Langley's shared secret with Sir Reginald, a black market deal that bound them in mutual ruin. "Dr. Langley," Poirot said, "she killed to protect this secret, fearing Sir Reginald would burn the codex and expose their past. She wove a web of misdirection, using your belongings to cast suspicion. But the truth, it cannot be hidden from the little grey cells." Lady Eleanor spoke first, her voice soft. "Mr. Poirot, you've given us clarity, but at such a cost. Reginald, he was flawed, but I loved him. I wish I'd understood his fears." Poirot's tone was gentle. "Madame, his fears were his own, but your strength, it will carry you forward." Julian's voice was bitter. "And me, disinherited, my father dead, this cursed manor, all because of that book. What am I supposed to do now?" Poirot's gaze was steady. "Monsieur, you have youth, time, and the chance to forge your own path. The codex, it is gone from your life. Let it be." Clara Henshaw, her usual sharpness dulled, spoke next. "I was wrong about the voices, Mr. Poirot. I thought I could use the codex for my article, but I never meant for this." "And you, Mademoiselle Lyle," Poirot said, turning to Beatrice, "your fear led you to misidentify the voice, but your honesty, it helped uncover the truth." Beatrice nodded, tears in her eyes. "I was so afraid. I'm sorry." Victor Crane and Ernest Whitby offered little, their roles as unwitting pawns in Dr. Langley's scheme leaving them subdued. Poirot dismissed them with a nod, his work complete. As the guests dispersed, Hastings turned to Poirot. "You've given them closure, Poirot, but it's so final. The manor, the codex, the secrets, it's all over." Poirot's smile was faint. "Over, oui, but the echoes of truth, they linger. The human heart, it carries its scars, but also its strength. We have done our part, Hastings. Let us leave this place to its future." They gathered their belongings, the manor's heavy oak doors closing behind them as they stepped into the crisp air. The car awaited, ready to carry them back to London. Poirot paused, glancing back at Blackthorn Manor, its towers standing sentinel against the sky. "The truth," he said softly, "it is a light that banishes shadows, but it leaves its mark. Come, mon ami, our work here is done." As the car rolled away, the manor faded into the distance, its secrets laid bare, its echoes of truth resonating in the hearts of those who remained. Hercule Poirot, his little grey cells triumphant, looked to the road ahead, ready for the next challenge fate would bring. Chapter 14. The Final Threads. The seventh day at Blackthorn Manor was marked by a stillness that seemed to settle over the estate like a gentle sigh, as if the house itself exhaled in relief at the resolution of its dark secret. The Wiltshire countryside, bathed in the soft glow of a late autumn morning, stretched out in serene indifference, its fields and hedgerows untouched by the human drama that had unfolded within the manor's walls. Hercule Poirot, his investigation complete, prepared to depart for London, but not before tying up the final threads of the case that had so captivated his little grey cells. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, packed their belongings with a sense of finality, though his mind lingered on the complexities of the truth they had uncovered. "Poirot," Hastings said, folding a shirt with less care than his friend would approve. "We've got our murderer, the motive, the clues all sorted, but I can't shake the feeling that there's something more, some detail we've overlooked. Dr. Langley's confession, it's complete, isn't it?" Poirot, adjusting his hat in the mirror with meticulous precision, turned to Hastings with a faint smile. "Mon ami, your instincts, they are sharper than you know. The confession of Dr. Langley, it is true, but the tapestry of this crime, it has threads that extend beyond her act. There is one final question. Why did Sir Reginald choose to confront her that night, knowing the danger? The answer, it lies in the human heart, and we shall seek it before we leave." Hastings raised an eyebrow. "You mean to go back to the manor again? Poirot, we've already turned back once. What's left to find?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A motive within a motive, Hastings. The Liber Veritatis was not just a secret shared by Sir Reginald and Dr. Langley. It was a bond that tied them to others. I suspect one final conversation will illuminate the shadows." They returned to Blackthorn Manor, arriving just as the remaining guests were preparing to depart. Lady Eleanor was overseeing the packing of her trunks, her face pale but resolute. Julian was in the stables, his mood still stormy but tempered by resignation. Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw were in the drawing-room, their professional alliance strained but intact. Ernest Whitby lingered in the hall, his nervous demeanour unchanged, while Beatrice Lyle sat quietly in the morning-room, her shawl drawn tight. Poirot requested a final meeting in the drawing-room, and the guests gathered, reluctantly, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and weariness. The fire, though smaller than in previous days, cast a warm glow across the room, softening the tension that lingered in the air. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice steady and commanding, "the case of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder is solved, and Dr. Langley will face justice. Yet before I depart, I must address one final thread. A question of why Sir Reginald chose that night to confront his past, risking his life." He turned to Lady Eleanor, his tone gentle but probing. "Madame, you spoke of your husband's obsession with the Codex, his fear that its secrets could ruin reputations. Did he ever confide in you about his past with Dr. Langley?" Lady Eleanor's hands tightened on her handkerchief, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a flicker of pain. "Not directly," she admitted, "but in the weeks before his death he was different, restless, secretive. He mentioned a mistake from long ago, something he regretted but could not undo. I thought it was about his collection, but now I see it was more." Poirot nodded, then addressed the group. The Liber Veritatis, it was not just a book, but a symbol of a shared transgression. Sir Reginald and Dr. Langley procured it through illicit means in Cairo years ago. Its discovery threatened to expose them both. But there is more. Sir Reginald's note, "Must be stopped, Codex, danger," was not only a warning to Dr. Langley, but a plea to protect another. He turned to Beatrice Lyle, whose eyes widened in alarm. "Mademoiselle Lyle, you were close to Sir Reginald, a distant cousin but a confidant. Did he ever speak to you of his fears, or of a duty to protect someone?" Beatrice's voice trembled. He told me the day before he died that he had to make things right. He said the Codex could hurt someone dear to him, someone innocent. I didn't understand, but he was so earnest I promised to keep quiet. Poirot's gaze softened. "And who, mademoiselle, was this innocent?" Beatrice hesitated, then whispered, "Eleanor. He said he'd do anything to protect her." A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Eleanor's face crumpled, tears spilling. "Reginald, he was protecting me." "Oui, madame," Poirot said. "The Codex's exposure would have implicated him, yes, but also you as his wife. Your reputation, your social standing, it would have been tarnished by association." He confronted Dr. Langley to ensure her silence, not knowing it would cost his life. Julian, his voice hoarse, spoke up. "So, father died for her? After all their arguments, he was still trying to shield her." Poirot nodded. "The heart, it is complex, monsieur. Sir Reginald's love for his wife, it was deeper than his pride. Dr. Langley, fearing her own ruin, acted in panic. But the root of the crime was Sir Reginald's resolve to protect his family." Clara Henshaw, her voice subdued, asked, "And my article, was that why he was so angry with me?" "Partially," Poirot said. "Your inquiries into the Codex's origins stirred his fears, Mademoiselle Henshaw. He saw you as a threat, but not the true danger." Victor Crane, silent until, now cleared his throat. "Mr. Poirot, you've uncovered more than I thought possible. But what now? The Codex goes to a museum, and we all move on?" Poirot's smile was faint. "The Codex, it will be studied, its secrets preserved, but no longer a threat. You, monsieur, and all of you, must carry the weight of this truth, but also its release. The past, it is understood, and the future, it is yours to shape." As the guests absorbed his words, Poirot dismissed them, his final duty fulfilled. Outside, the manor stood quiet, its secrets laid bare. Hastings, gathering their coats, turned to Poirot. "You've done it, old chap. You found the heart of it, Sir Reginald's love for Eleanor. It's almost poetic." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Poetry, Hastings, is the language of the heart, and the heart, it is the key to every mystery. Come, our train awaits." They stepped into the waiting car, the manor receding into the golden light. The final threads of the case were woven into place, and Hercule Poirot, his little grey cells at peace, looked to the horizon, ready for whatever puzzle life would next present. Chapter 15. The Departure. The final morning at Blackthorn Manor was bathed in a crystalline light, the Wiltshire Valley shimmering under a sky of unblemished blue. The manor, its ancient stones warmed by the autumn sun, stood as a silent sentinel, its secrets laid bare by Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth. The air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves. and a gentle breeze stirred the ivy that clung to the estate's walls, as if whispering farewell to the drama that had unfolded within. Poirot, his suitcase packed with meticulous care, stood in the hall, his impeccable suit and polished shoes a testament to his unshakable composure. Captain Hastings beside him felt a quiet satisfaction mingled with the melancholy of departure, the weight of the case settling into memory. "Poirot," Hastings said, adjusting his hat. "It's been a devil of a case, hasn't it? Dr. Langley's confession, Sir Reginald's secret, the codex. It's all so intricate, yet you unravelled it like a skein of wool. But I wonder, will they ever recover the people we leave behind?" Poirot's green eyes flickered with a rare softness, his moustache curving in a faint smile. "Mon ami, the human spirit, it is resilient, yet fragile. The truth, it wounds, but it also heals. The inhabitants of Blackthorn Manor, they will carry the scars of this tragedy, but they will find their way. Our task, it is to illuminate, not to mend." Their motor car waited in the drive, its engine idling softly, ready to carry them to the station for the London train. Before departing, Poirot requested one last walk through the manor's grounds, a ritual Hastings knew signalled the detectives need to reflect. They strolled the gravel paths, passing the rose bushes where the blue silk had been found, the library window with its trace of chalk, and the conservatory where Clara Henshaw had claimed her alibi. The maze in the distance loomed like a silent guardian, its hedges concealing no more secrets. As they paused by the garden, Poirot spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "Hastings, this case, it has been a study in the human heart, its passions, its fears, its capacity for both love and destruction. Sir Reginald, he died to protect his wife, yet his secret with Dr. Langley set the stage for his demise. Dr. Langley, she killed to preserve her legacy, yet her confession was an act of surrender to truth. Each suspect, they played their part. In the drama, their lies and truths weaving the tapestry we have unravelled." Hastings nodded, his gaze on the manor's towers. "It's almost Shakespearean, isn't it? All that intrigue over a book. But the Liber Veritatis, it's safe now, headed to a museum. Do you think its secrets will ever be fully known?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The Codex, it holds prophecies, oui, but its true power was in what it meant to those who coveted it. Its secrets, they are academic now, safe in the hands of scholars who will study, not destroy. For us, it is enough that its role in this tragedy is ended." They returned to the manor's hall, where Lady Eleanor awaited, her grey gown replaced by a soft blue dress, a sign of tentative renewal. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice steady but warm, "I cannot thank you enough. You've given me clarity, however painful. I'm leaving for France tomorrow, to start anew. The manor, it's too full of memories." Poirot bowed deeply. "Madame, you have strength, and it will carry you far. May your future be brighter than your past." Julian emerged from the stables, his face less stormy than before. "Mr. Poirot," he said gruffly, "I'm selling this place. Father's gone. The Codex is gone. There's nothing left for me here. Maybe you were right about forging my own path." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Monsieur, the path, it is yours to choose. Let go of anger, and you will find it." Victor Crane and Clara Henshaw, preparing to depart for London, offered curt nods. "You've made quite a story, Mr. Poirot," Clara said, her journalist's instinct undimmed. "I'll write about the Codex, but tastefully, I promise." Crane's smile was strained. "And I'll publish it. We've learned our lesson about meddling in secrets." Ernest Whitby, clutching his briefcase, mumbled his thanks, his relief at escaping scrutiny palpable. Beatrice Lyle, the last to approach, clasped Poirot's hand. "You saw through my fear, Mr. Poirot. I'll never forget that." Poirot's voice was gentle. "Mademoiselle, courage is found in truth. You have it in abundance." With farewells exchanged, Poirot and Hastings boarded the car, the manor receding into the golden haze of the valley. As they drove toward the station, Hastings leaned back, his mind replaying the case. "Poirot, you said the truth heals, but it's a bitter medicine sometimes. Do you ever tire of it?" Poirot's gaze was fixed on the road ahead, his voice quiet but firm. "The truth, Hastings, it is my calling. It is not always kind, but it is necessary. The little grey cells, they thrive on the challenge, and I, Hercule Poirot, am their servant. Each case, it teaches us something of life, of love, of loss, of the eternal dance of human nature." The train to London awaited, its whistle piercing the morning air. As they settled into their compartment, the countryside blurring past, Hastings felt a sense of closure, the weight of Blackthorn Manor's secrets lifting at last. Poirot, his hands folded neatly, closed his eyes, a faint smile on his lips. The case was closed, the puzzle solved, and the Belgian detective, his mind at rest, was ready for the next enigma fate would bring. Blackthorn Manor faded into memory, its towers a distant silhouette, its story a chapter in the vast book of mysteries that Hercule Poirot, with his unparalleled intellect and unerring heart, would forever unravel.